friends, welcome to a new video. My name is Julie if you're new here, and today I'm going to review 5 enemies to lovers books. Some of these books I have read last year, some of these I have read this year, and I hope I will remember everything correctly because that's sometimes difficult. Just in the beginning I want to say, this is of course very subjective. I'm going to give you my opinion on these books. If I didn't like something doesn't mean it's bad or good, it's just my taste. This is solely to give you some inspiration, what kind of books with these tropes are out there, and hopefully after my description you can judge if you might enjoy it and if you could imagine to pick it up. This is also why I'm including not only 5-star reads for me, but also books that have included some parts which I didn't enjoy as much, just to include a broader range of books. So let's begin with the first of 5 books that I'm going to review in this video. The first book that I want to tell you about is The Ex Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This, I have to say, is a book that I enjoyed a lot, and it's one of the best ways I think that I have read this trope. This book tells the story of 2 people working at a radio station, and the station is struggling a little bit, so Shay, one of the employees there, one of our main characters, has the idea to start a podcast with 2 exes that talk about relationships and give relationship advice. I think that's what's the content of the podcast. Because she and her co-worker Dominic really hate each other, their boss thinks it would be a great opportunity to put both of them together and start this podcast, even though they have never been together. So they kind of also need to fake. It's not fake dating, it's more fake exing, you could call it. So they have to pretend to have been in a relationship. And of course that also means they have to get to know each other better. As you can tell, I have read this one quite a while ago and I can still vividly remember a lot of scenes in this book. And for me personally, that's always something very good, because usually I tend to forget everything that has happened in a book the second I've finished reading it. It's just gone. It's gone out of my mind, I don't remember. But with this one, I have a few scenes that have stuck with me for longer, and that really says something. It is also very believable why the main characters might not like each other, and also their hatred for each other. Shay works at the station, she has worked there for a very long time, and then Dominic comes in. He's a new employee, he's just fresh from uni, and he kind of gets all the attention and is seen as the guy who can do it all. Even though she has been doing this job for such a long time, he gets treated better than her and she thinks it's very unfair. He comes across as arrogant, and that's why she doesn't like him at first. And this is actually not just in a I don't like him way. They have an actual rivalry going on at the workplace. They are fighting about stuff like who gets which room, and it's very believable that that could be something that could trigger you in a work environment. So I think that's very well done, because oftentimes in enemies to lovers books, especially if they're adults, it's hard to believe why they would actually hate each other. You don't really have enemies in your life, do you? But actually in a workplace environment, when you're competitive, that is something that can happen quite easily. So I think this is a very good situation for this particular trope. And I actually felt it. I thought Dominic was so annoying when I started reading this book. It was very believable. But also this switch from I despise this guy to, actually I could like him, and he has some traits that are different from what I've expected him, and maybe I was a little bit quick to judge. That is something that was also very well done. There were facets to both of the characters that we got to know over the course of the book that I enjoyed very much. The character building was just chef's kiss. For me, this book is a better version of The Hating Game. I know a lot of people love The Hating Game. I didn't enjoy it that much actually, but I do enjoy workplace romance and workplace rivalry, as you could tell from my review so far. So this one was the book that really did it perfectly for me. So if you enjoy enemies to lovers in a workplace environment, I think this is the book for you. And also if you like a strong independent woman who still has to figure her life out a little bit, that's also something that is happening in this book. The second one of these 5 enemies to lovers books is Dating Dr. Dill by Nisha Sharma. This book is a very interesting story. I don't think I have read anything quite like it before. This is kind of a mixture between enemies to lovers and fake dating, even though still both of these elements aren't quite the main point of the plot or the center of the plot. So the 2 main characters really have a good amount of tension going on. When they meet, they really like each other. They meet in a bar and they kind of want to hook up, but then the male protagonist, Prim, he has to leave because he gets a call. And Karina, the female protagonist, is obviously very annoyed by that because he doesn't tell her why and he just leaves. So this is kind of also why they start to not like each other. In this moment, she's not liking him anymore. He doesn't have anything against her, but obviously it was just supposed to be a hookup. They don't expect to see each other again. But then they do. And it's actually on his TV show that he has, where she accompanies her sister, and then she sees him again, and she's really upset and makes a scene in front of the whole crowd and on live television. So that's fun. And this is also why they have a lot of tension, and I wouldn't say they don't like each other because after that incident it's actually... But they're definitely not friendly either. The reason why these two start fake dating then is because Karina wants to get the house that her family lives in from her father because her mom has died and she wants to keep the house. Her dad wants to sell it, and the only way she can really get it from her dad is when she finds someone to marry, or at least someone that she will be engaged with. There, Prim comes into play. But Karina really wants a real love, and Prim doesn't believe in real love. He believes love doesn't really exist and it's just sympathy for one another. So Karina doesn't want to date him because of that. That's also kind of what she was going on about in his live television show. That's why she keeps seeing other guys, and he is kind of her fallback if it doesn't work out and if she can't find someone she really likes. But yeah, that's kind of the concept of the story, and I think it's very interesting. I really don't think I've read anything like that. It's also a very complicated setup. You can definitely feel the chemistry between these two in the books, and let me tell you, it's spicy. What I also really enjoyed about it was that there's a huge family aspect in it, especially around Karina's family. We learn a lot about her family and her family dynamics. Both of the main characters come from an Indian background. I can honestly not judge if the representation there is done well or if it's over the top, but I still found it very interesting. The side characters all had such distinct personalities. It was very funny, especially the grandma. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't and you're planning to read it, you will know what I mean. What I especially like about this is that our main character, Karina, she's such a badass. She is such a strong character, and in her relationship with her family, she really, over the course of the book, learns to stand up for herself, and she's always speaking her mind about the issues, and that's something that I personally think is very cool and very good if you can do that. I wish I could always do that. She's just very strong. She really had to take some shit from her family, especially her sister, but also her dad. And I think it's great to see how she gets some support from her aunties and her friends as well. I really like her friend group. It's just very wholesome in a way, even though there's so much family drama going on. I honestly would have read a story that was about Karina alone, without any of the romance included, and I think that's the best thing you can say about a book. That even if you take the whole story away, just the characters being so interesting that you would read more about them. No matter in which context, that's something that I rarely have in romance books. So I can really recommend Dating Dr. Dill if you like strong female characters. The third enemies to lovers book that I want to talk about is The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. I loved the premise of this. This was probably the best premise out of all the 5. The premise is our main character Lena is a wedding planner and she gets left at the altar at her own wedding. That is something that no one wants to experience, and the guy who had to tell her that her fiancé isn't going to marry her was his best man, Max. And obviously, Lena doesn't really like him anymore because he also might have had something to do with it. We're not sure if that's true or what. But yeah, these two don't really get along that well. And then a few years later, I think they meet again in a work context. And they actually pretend to not know each other. Her ex-fiancé is there as well, and they all pretend like they don't know each other in front of the client that they both work for. And that means that she has to collaborate with Max, because her ex-fiancé, he really doesn't want anything to do with her. She doesn't want anything to do with him anymore, so these two have to work together to actually do a project together. And do it well, because then also her ex-fiancé is kind of competing with them in proposing ideas. So of course she also wants to be better than him, and she also really needs a job. I really like Lena's personality in this book. She is, again, a very strong female character. She is working on her business, which she has built from the ground up, which is also why she needs that job now. She is very hardworking, and she's also kind of hiding her emotions. She's trying to not let that control her, and also not to let that get in the way of her work, and not to upset her family or anything. And that's also why she kind of comes off as a little bit cold-hearted. And that's also what our main character Max thinks about her. But we can actually see her bond with her family, which is very cute, and you can see that she isn't cold-hearted at all. To me, Max didn't really have that strong character traits, at least not as strong as hers. He did have kind of this inferiority thing going on with his brother. He was trying to compete with him. That was the main part of his motivation also for working on this project. But I didn't know that much more about him, except that he wanted to prove himself. But I did like him regardless. And he got more interesting as the book went on. What made this book even better was the incorporation of Brazilian culture in Lena's life and Lena's family. In my opinion, it was very well incorporated. Also, two people dating who are not from the same cultural background and trying to get an understanding for that. That was very nice. And bonding over food was a point in the book, and that is something that I feel is very relatable. What I also liked was that these two characters solved their problems, and they solved it with actually talking about them. Because sometimes in romance novels it can just be like, oh, okay, this was the problem, now we have a solution, we don't need to talk about anything anymore. But this one, it felt like they were actually working on it, not just like a little happy ever after out of nowhere. It is a typical rom-com though, so of course a little bit of drama was included, but I actually didn't mind it in this book, which is surprising because I don't like drama in romance books. So if that sounds like a book you might enjoy, then pick up The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. The fourth enemies to lovers book is actually called The Enemy by Sarah Adams. With this book I'm not 100% sure, but I'll try my best to be objective and describe it to you. The reason why I'm not 100% sure is that it was marketed as an enemies to lovers book, but I don't really know if it is. But let me explain, and then you can decide if that's enough for you. So this book tells the story of Ryan and June. They both come from the same town in which they grew up together, and they have basically known each other for their whole lives, but they haven't seen each other for the last 12 years. In high school, they actually teased each other a lot and did everything possible to annoy the other person as much as they could. And when they come back to their hometown for a wedding, they meet at a party and June actually gets pretty drunk because she sees Ryan and she kind of hates him, but actually secretly she likes him, or at least thinks he's attractive. So that's annoying to her and gets drunk. And she also kind of embarrassed herself in front of him, so that didn't make her happy. There's some good banter that night, and Ryan, in the end, decides to bring her home when he sees that she's drunk, because he actually stays sober for the night, and that's why he decides to drive her home. The next morning, June is really embarrassed and doesn't like that he brought her home, and they both meet again and again over the next couple of days, just because it's a small town and they both are involved in the wedding planning. And then they actually have to prepare the wedding cake together, because the person who should actually do it, I don't know, can't do it for some reason, I forgot. The bride asks both of them to do it because June is a baker, Ryan is a chef, and that makes perfect sense. So yeah, pretty fast it's clear that these two like to annoy each other, but they don't actually hate each other. But I did really like the story, and I liked the way the characters interacted with each other. You could actually tell that they had a history, and it was very fun. And there was a lot of plot going on, which is in this case a good thing, because it was interesting plot and it made me want to keep reading. There was a bit too much drama for my taste in the end, but as I've said before, that's just my thing with books, with romance books. Ignore my opinion on that. Even though they weren't really enemies, and it was more of a teasing from high school moment going on, I still really enjoyed the chemistry between the characters, and I would recommend this book. The last Enemies to Lovers book is When Stars Collide by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. Two Stars Collide is actually a very fun play on words, because the story is about two stars who collide. This doesn't make anything clearer, does it? The male main character is an NFL player, if I remember correctly, and our main female character is an opera singer. So we have Thad and Olivia. They are both very different characters. Obviously, she's an opera singer and he is a football star. But the reason why these two meet is that they are going on a press tour for a watch company that they are both collaborating with. I actually found that a very interesting trope, or a very interesting way to make two characters interact with each other or make them meet, to let them go on a press tour together. That is a very believable way why they should spend so much time together. I really like that idea. Also, the reason why our main character Olivia hates this guy is very, very believable. Oh my god, if... I know I can't tell you, but I won't spoil anything. But if you read it, it's a good reason to hate someone. Oh yes. I love the characters. They were very interesting to read about. I have never read any book that involved an opera singer, and it was just so interesting, and I found it was very well researched, or at least it read as if it had been well researched. I didn't fact check anything, but it sounded good. It was a very fascinating world, and just the situation was so interesting of both of them being so isolated and traveling together, staying in hotels. That's just, yeah, if you know me, I'm very obsessed with like star culture, so that is something that I really liked. In the beginning, their whole interactions felt very organic to me. It felt very natural. Even though these two are stars and obviously everything is much more dramatic, this book has so much drama and I liked it. Am I okay? Even though that is the case, I still think that it is actually relatable in a way. Because the struggle of either having a successful career or taking time and focusing on building a relationship is something that is very real, and it can be a big factor in choosing to be with someone or maybe not. Choosing what to focus on can be very hard, and I think that's very relatable. My only concern with this book, or not concern, but the thing that I didn't enjoy as much, was that it was very long. I think it could have been, definitely could have been shorter. Yeah, there was a lot of drama. So, of course, a little bit of that could have been cut out. There were several plot points at the end that I don't think were really necessary, and it would have worked without them. So that's like the only point that I didn't enjoy as much. Read this book if you really like drama and if you enjoy two people from a very different background coming together and maybe also learning more about the world of opera. So, as you can tell, all of these books are very different from each other actually, and I think that's such an interesting thing, that we can have one trope, enemies to lovers, and there can be so many creative tropes coming from that. And I think that is so cool that you can be creative with that and not just write the same story over and over again. If I had to choose one of these books to recommend to you, it would be The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon, because it's the one that just stuck in my head for the longest time and that I remember the most of. And I also feel like it has become kind of a classic in the romance genre since it came out, so if you only pick up one of those, I would recommend this one. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any other tropes that you would like me to review, or if you have any enemies to lovers book recs, then please let me know in the comments. See you in my next video. Bye!